First, we have to do a motion regarding the audibility of remote board member participants and verify that for each member participating remotely, the remote participant's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for the meeting room, confirmation of their location, and that their remote participation comports with the policy. Board member Mangum, can you please state for the record your location and the reason you are participating remotely this evening?
Sure. Rachel Mangum, participating from my home in Fairfax County, and I am participating remotely because work commitments required me to stay later at work than would allow me to make it to the meeting in person.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, I move that board member Mangum may be clearly heard and that her remote participation comports with the policy.
Is there a second? Ms. Orr, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? The motion carries. Next, the ARB needs to determine how long each member of the public will be able to speak during the public comment periods. The public will be allowed to comment after the consent agenda items and after each action item as a standard ARB practice. Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, I move that each member of the public have 3 minutes to speak.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kalinsky got it first. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Notification of the meeting being recorded. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted online within 10 days. As is standard ARB practice, we read the statement of purpose and intent of historic overlay districts at the beginning of the meeting. And Mr. Burns has kindly volunteered to read this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Historic overlay districts are created for the purpose of promoting the general welfare, education, economic prosperity, and recreational pleasure of the public through the perpetuation of those general areas or individual structures and premises that have been officially designated by the Board of Supervisors as having historical, cultural, architectural, or archaeological significance. Regulations within such districts are intended to protect against destruction of or encroachment upon such areas, structures, and premises, to encourage uses which will lead to their continuance, conservation, and improvement in a manner appropriate to the preservation of the cultural, social, economic, political, architectural, or archaeological heritage of the county, to prevent creation of environmental influences adverse to such purposes, and to ensure that new structures and uses within such districts will be in keeping with the character to be preserved and enhanced.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. The order in which items will be heard will be set at the meeting. Additional items may be added to the agenda at the discretion of the chair. The applicants for initial and follow-up presentations are reminded that they've mailed drawings and other documentations as appropriate to the ARB prior to the meeting, to which the project will be reviewed. If members have not received such documentation, an application may be postponed until a subsequent meeting. And next, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, I move the ARB approve the agenda for the March 13th, 2025 meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Burns, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. I would remind applicants that if you're here for the first time with your project presentation, we'd ask that you limit your presentation to 8 minutes. That doesn't include our discussion or our questions. And for a resubmission, please limit it to 3 minutes. Denise, any guests we need to introduce or recognize this evening?
Yes, actually two. So Christopher Evans is joining us. He is from the Zoning Evaluation Division. He is the staff coordinator for the notice of violation for the case that we're going to be hearing later this evening. And would you like to introduce Mr. Rapetti?
Sure. We have a new member. Cheryl Rapetti has joined us as our History Commission member. And Cheryl, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. Feel free.
Been a member of the History Commission for a number of years. Many years back, I actually was on the other side of the table as a community, advocate for historic buildings. Happy to be here this evening.
Well, thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you. All right, so that will move us further into our agenda. First, we have the consent calendar action items. And first, we have ARB 2025 PR 0010, the 2951 Chainbridge Road UMC sign. Applicant is proposing an internal cabinet upgrade to an electronic message display with no structural changes to an existing monument sign. Is Mr. Urshins here? You don't have to go up there for now, sir. Before I turn it over to the board, are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I will turn it over to the board for any discussion or for a motion on this item. Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, I move the ARB approve action item ARB 2025 PR 00010 located at 2951 Chainbridge Road for the proposed upgrades and changes to the existing monument sign as submitted and presented at the March 13th ARB meeting. Further, any changes to the application that differ from what was submitted tonight must be approved by the ARB. Upon review of those materials, the proposal is found to meet the development condition requirements of SE 200 PR 035.
Is there a second? Mr. Thank you. Thank you. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? And the motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep, you have a good evening.
All right.
All right, that puts us into our items for action. Our first item for action is ARB 25 LKA 05 1625 Washington Plaza Commercial Air Conditioning. The applicant is proposing to install a heat pump system to replace the existing chilled water AC system. And Mr. Lee represents the application. Yep, Mr. Lee, you could come on up, sir. Thank you.
So Jonathan used your application can you see a screen?
Yeah.
He just created a presentation based on your application.
Yes, okay. I would like to apply to get approval to install the heat pump to install on the roof of the building. So if they have another,
Jonathan, can you forward the slide, please? There we go.
like that is a flat like that, the structure of my unit. And it's gonna go up all the way up above the residential area. Next slide. Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Right there. So we're gonna be intent to install like that, but then from this parking lot, you will not see those red one. But that's the one that the last time we were at the workshop to ensure that from that side of the parking lot, we will not see those units extend above the roof like that. So the next slide. No, not this one, the pictures, yeah. Right there. So what we did is we're using the actual, the shipping box of the actual, heat pump unit, and we mount it on the crate there to mimic the 20 inches beam, I-beam. We mount it across the existing beam of the structures, and that is the height of the heat pump AC unit. Yeah. Next slide. And there is the location from one end of the roof to another end that we're gonna mount it right in the middle of it. Next one. And this is the service corridor where the existing, cable TV going up to the roof. We're gonna use the same opening, go from the right side of it is our unit. So then the revision and the power supply gonna come from our unit to go through here to get on the roof. Next slide. And those are the conduit we're gonna put it in to protect the line and to protect the element from the cable TV cable. And these to be on the roof. So then we're gonna look, there is existing opening right now already. So we're gonna drill 3 more to install electrical, and these are, the yellow one are refrigerant line. And these are the boxes up there, and these are the photo we take from different angle from the plaza, the front and the back, that you cannot see the box protruded above the roof line. Same thing. Remember the last picture we showed that we're gonna be up here, the red one. Now with those mock-up, the box that we cannot see anymore. So that is the, it show that where did we take a picture from, one from here and one from there. And this is the we're gonna install right above that. These are the spec sheet of the units that we're gonna install up there. Yeah. That's it. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. We know,
Jonathan, thank you for helping me. Yeah.
no, thank you, Mr. Lee. We know you've been,
Any questions?
yeah, stay up there, please. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I turn it over to my board members for any comments. Mr. Daniel, then Mr. Plumpy.
I really appreciate the mock-up you set up here to show us what it was going to look like. I think we asked you a lot of questions about that. And I think I appreciate that. I know air conditioning has been and cooling, heating and cooling is a big issue with these buildings. I think it's more of a concern, at least for me, from a residential perspective than it is from a commercial perspective, because I think it's going to be difficult to meet those needs at a commercial level compared to a residential level if you start doing miniature residentials. And I personally think this one works, but I think there's enough effort put in, locational effort put in, that can't necessarily always succeed. That's my take on it.
Mr. Plumpy.
Sure, thank you. Actually, I was going to say exactly what you said first. I was going to say it's a great presentation. I'm glad you did the mock-ups. I hope we can use this as an example for other people when they do come in, if they actually do mock it up, because it's an eye-opener. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This time it really worked well. So thank you so much, and I appreciate your patience as well. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Mr. Burns.
My observation is that when you put new mechanical packages on historic buildings, they don't always work well. They don't always fit. They're sometimes intrusive. This particular application, it works because they're able to locate it in such a way that it is not a visual intrusion. And they're making very clever use of existing chases and conduits within the building as a means of getting the necessary conduit and refrigerant lines in place. And because of that, it has almost no visual impact on the historic character of the Lake End Center in general. And so I think this is almost an exemplary example of the right way of doing things to achieve your needs to heat and cool properly a commercial space and not impinge on the historic character of the district. So thank you, sir, for your
Thank you.
very careful approach to this the challenge.
Well, thank you for Denise and then Jonathan and the board. Last time I was here, I didn't know anything at all. And then you guys gave me some idea to how to do it.
No.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you responding to the ideas.
Right. Yeah.
Our ideas. Any other comments from board members? And if not, I would certainly entertain a motion. Mr. Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I move the ARB approve action item ARB 25 LKA 05 located at 1625 Washington Plaza, Suite 1625. In the Lake Ann Historic Overlay District for the proposed commercial air conditioning system installation as submitted and presented at the March 13th ARB meeting. Any changes to the application from what was approved must return to the ARB. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101 Historic Overlay Districts.
Is there a second? Mr. Burns, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr.
Very much.
Thank you, sir.
I will receive some kind of letter or something.
Yes, within a week.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. That brings us to our second action for item, which is ARB 25 LOR 03 9514 Workhouse Way landscaping. The applicant is proposing to replace the natural grass with a durable and synthetic turf product to withstand the foot traffic of patrons while preserving the integrity of the landscaping improvements made with the recent delivery of the W13 and W15 buildings, and Jared Herring represents the application.
I know how much everybody loves samples, so,
Thank you for this, everybody. Thank you.
next slide, please. So this, as you know, the Workhouse Arts Campus is within the Lorton Laurel Hill, MOA, district, so just a couple maps. Next slide. And these are, a couple renderings, of the recent improvements to, buildings W13 and W15 that were, delivered, substantially completed, delivered in, about a year ago, in early 2024. And then just a map of the Workhouse Arts Campus, there on the left. Next slide. In the area in question, you can see directly abutting to W13 to the south. It's an area that's just been very heavily traveled, a lot of foot traffic, trampled down grass. So it's about 1,600 square feet right there. And that area is used for programming events of the county's tenant, Bunnyman Brewing, as well as picnic tables and cornhole. So obviously a lot of traffic from a lot of patrons down there. Next slide. So this is the condition in early September. Bunnyman Brewing opened, I guess technically the end of June, early July. So this is after a pretty dry summer, and but early September, as you can see, the grass is already completely, in disrepair. Next slide. So we did have it resodded towards the end of September. As you can see, it's nice and plush and good to go. There are some workers excavating the area for the new sod. Next slide. And then these are the existing conditions right now. These photos were taken in December 2024. So as you can see, this is an area with grass that is just not going to thrive due to the amount of customers that the Bunnyman is bringing in down there. Next slide. And these are, as you can see, you guys have a sampled product. It has a base layer that has a little bit of the thatch in there. So a little bit more of the browning. So it makes it look a little bit more natural. It's porous and it'll go right on the existing area. There are 2 storm grates there, and it will be sloped off, excavated, put down with a gravel base, and be perfect for operations. Might be one more. That might be it. Oh, yes, we do have 2 existing trees. And this past Monday, we actually met with board member Plumpy down there on site to take a look at the product and kind of what we were trying to do. He can speak more to that, but we did identify 2 trees that we feel like we found a very comfortable location to replant those. One more, that might be it. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Any members of the public wish to comment on this? Yes, sir.
I'm Keith Shelton, Land Use Co-Chair for the South County Federation. Here to bring questions from the Federation. What was the cost of the sod install back in September?
I suppose that's something I should disclose.
Yeah.
Sure. I believe it was $6,000.
And what would be the cost of the synthetic?
It is $29,520.
Who would be paying that cost?
This would be coming out of a contributory fund that of expenses that go down for the operations of the Workhouse Arts campus.
Would Buddy Med really be contributing to those costs at all?
They do pay operating expenses for the site, and it goes, I believe, into the same fund where that money goes from, but they do pay annual operating expenses in the amount of $6,000 annually.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All right, I will turn it over to my board members for questions or comments. Mr. Polly?
Jared, thank you for the presentation. The CEO of Workhouse is here as well. Thank you so much for coming, Brian. Keith. Keith, actually, hi, Brian. I'm losing my mind today, so it's a tough day. Keith.
That's strike one, Jim.
Sorry, man. Okay. Anyways, met there, very cooperative with the owner of Bunny Man and so forth. They had other sod or synthetic sod samples there. I selected this one because of its thatch. It's most realistic. It's not glossy, shiny. I think it's a good product. As a landscape architect, we specify this quite a bit, so forth, for high use areas such as this, either on grade or on top of structures and so forth. I did recommend that they put in a under drain system a little bit because water won't get trapped underneath it. So we don't want to fester an issue there. And that could be done pretty easily in the gravel base underneath there. There's two large inlets. The synthetic turf would go over those inlets themselves, so there will not be a problem. Right now, they're cast iron and so forth. The kids can hurt themselves. So this would actually be done as a common practice to lay this over the inlets themselves. So it's because it's porous, the water goes into it and so forth. There's a little bit of grading that needs to happen out there because of the existing conditions. So I have these big steep slopes that go into these drains, be regraded out. I suggested to them, or not suggest, but require them to grade it so that's ADA compliancy, 2% or less in a major access to it, as well as throughout the whole area. So that's very achievable. I also, in addition to this, there's some areas, and it'd be interesting to put the aerial photograph again, please, and maybe zoom in on it a little bit. There's some excessive wear to the existing grass between the building and the sidewalk that is planned left there. Incidentally, the two stars do represent the trees there.
You're talking about the 2024 aerial image?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect right there. Before I get into that, the two stars are European hornbeam trees, very tight canopy, so they will not be a problem with the other two trees that will stay, the other three trees that are going to remain. So I think that's a great place for them because those trees are not doing anything, not providing any shade, of course, for many, 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 many years. And the European hornbeam will not do that because they're very tight, almost like a lollipop, if you want to call it that. In any event, the area that is to the left end of the building, I suggested them to go ahead and take the synthetic turf all the way around that side of the building to the exit of the building, which is that concrete that where it meets the building. Kind of, does everybody know where I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then also plan north of that entrance. It gets the parking lot people cut across and everything. Right now it's a mud pit. So I suggested them just take the concrete to the face of the building there because it doesn't make sense. There's a 3-foot spike strip of sod that really doesn't mean much. I mean, it's a good place. I mean, this is their back door. So there's a lot of service activity going back there. So I just say, let's make it look respectable, good versus a maintenance issue. And you can see where the inlets are on that photograph. You want to point them out. There's the two divots, one in the shadow of the left tree, and then there's one to the right of the shadow of the second tree there. Those would be cover-ups. They won't be able to see them anyway. Right now, they're not ADA compliant grades. People, with stiletto heels, like all the jury would have, put their heels in there. But, basically that all solves a lot of problems there. It's a high activity use. But I even recommended to them as they go in for shade elements, maybe in the future, because we have another project in Liberty, which I have the shade elements. Those umbrella fabric is to come back here, and I think so that we could entertain that if you ever wanted to do that, as opposed to not having shades. I think it'd still be an issue. I know you have temporary shade things. Well, just giving them kind of heads up. I think we're open, but again, it has to go through the approval process and see if it'll pass or whatnot. And I'll say that the cost questions are very interesting because if it's $6,000 per sod, you do it twice a year, and it's $12,000. So within and the mowing costs and so forth, fertilization costs. So let's just say hypothetically it's $15,000 per year to install and maintain the sod. So I think within 2 years, you'd have that money recuperated. The synthetic turf lasts approximately, if it's maintained well, 10 to 15 years. It's easy to clean because there'll be food and beverage here, so it'll be easy to clean and so forth. So I think it's the most sanitary type thing, especially where there's food and beverage served. So I appreciate your time out there meeting with me, and I think this will make it more even a greater success than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pumpy. Ms. Mangum.
Hi, thank you. My question is about the amount of grading and ground disturbance. My concern here is just that I realize this area has been previously developed and likely very disturbed, but I did want to find out whether the Fairfax County Park Authority Archaeology and Collections Branch had previously reviewed this area and determined that there was limited potential for intact archaeological resources. Just, knowing that this area does retain some sensitivity for archaeology, wanted to make sure that that was factored in when I heard that grading and then some limited ground disturbance looks like it's going to be involved for installation of those 2 trees. So have you had a chance to talk to anybody in that unit, or is there existing information you're building off of to say that there's limited potential to impact any archaeology that might be there? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Mangum. Yes, we do have that information on file that as a reference from the W13 and 15 capital project. So we know that they determined that that it's already been addressed with that construction, and there are no impacts.
Great, thank you so much, and appreciate it. I'm kind of newer on the board, so probably wasn't around when those big building plans were in place. So thank you.
No problem. Ms. Hammack.
Hi. So historically, this was a workhouse, so I'm not convinced that it always had a pristine lawn. I imagine it would get, depending on the weather that season, it would come and go. But in the spirit of the adaptive reuse, I understand this space is going to be animated and it'll make just for a much more enjoyable space for people to sit on the grass, play on the grass. And I think your product is great. Fine. But my question is, are we, by approving this today, if we approve it, are we saying that everywhere on the site, we're going to be okay with the faux grass? Because I'd like to know how we feel about that, because I don't think I would like every greenscaped area in the site to have faux grass. And then how are we deciding it? Are we deciding, well, what's the space used for? Does it get good? I'm not a landscape architect, but are we saying, oh, it can get faux grass because it doesn't get good light and air, or like what's our criteria for where we'd like to see the faux grass on the site?
Well, I normally don't speak till the end as the chairman, but since I'm the legal representative, I guess I can speak now. What I would say is much like our commentary was on the last project, we were considering the impacts and the factual circumstances of that specific location, whether it was affecting the view shed of the historic overlay district by approving that air conditioning unit. I would say the same thing here, that we're making an evaluation of this specific area, whether it's appropriate in this specific area, and not saying, that it can go anywhere. If they want to put artificial grass somewhere else on this property, they're going to have to bring it back to us again, and we'd have to decide if that location is an acceptable location or not.
Okay.
That would be my.
And I'm comfortable with this as presented today, but I'm also comfortable with places based on the history of the site, some mud, some, I don't want mud in sight. I mean,
No.
He was just getting my attention.
oh, okay. With me, I'm like Miss Magnum, I don't have the rich institutional history of reviewing the site for so many years, but that's just my input.
Mr. Plumpy, then
Sure.
Mr. Burns.
Sure. One thing, we did the master plan 20 years ago for this, and we had the bold move, let's make the entire quad synthetic turf. Because we know it's high activity use and so forth. Right now, if you go there, it's a mud pit where the tent is and so forth, because it's heavily used. So you got a way adaptive. This is an adaptive reuse, not a making it into reality what it once was, and it's a pristine thing. You hit the nail on the head there. So I think on a case-by-case basis, but me personally, again, we do this in other areas that are more, that are as historic. And the synthetic turf seems to be acceptable because it is porous, it does drain and so forth, as opposed to paving the whole site. Or make it impervious gravel or whatever. And the really thought there is, you know, it is a adaptive reuse, so it has to be used in an appropriate manner, or it'll just be, you know, I guess the consequences would be is synthetic turf or a muddy area that will always be a nuisance.
It is reversible. You just pull up the turf.
Yeah, precisely. You
Yeah.
can, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Exactly. So, I support it wholeheartedly, but I get you actually right, case by case basis. What's interesting is from the view shed of 123 as you drive by, and even if you're parked stranded in traffic, you can't see this because the view shed it is down low. And then also if everything happened farther away from it, I think it would be still pretty hard to go until you actually touch and feel it once you get to it in a very close manner. So,
Yeah, technology has come a long way since
absolutely.
soccer in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Plumpy. Mr. Burns.
Gabriella raised the concern that I was going to voice, which is, is this the nose of the camel getting in the tent? In terms of setting a precedent for this sort of thing. But along those lines, can you tell me how much other turf do you replace on a regular basis in the arts complex?
None.
So this is the only place you have, okay. And the other observation I would make, and the many times that I have gone to the Workhouse Arts Center, that this will be the best grass on the property. And it will be anomalous because of that. And so it will look like you have a groundskeeper for this particular little patch, but no one else. So it's just, I share the concerns that you first raised, is that this is a little out of sorts, and someone, I forget who, said this was a workhouse and it was probably not a carefully manicured lawn in the first place. And so yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to raise those concerns, but I agree that saying that this is a unique circumstance and the approvals of this, should it be approved, are limited to this particular site in this particular use, then I would be comfortable with it.
Mr. Daniel, then Mr. Plumpy.
I share the worries of Ms. Hammock and Mr. Burns. I don't want to see a checkerboard across the workhouse in the future of, you know, because that my problem is more with this in wintertime, when suddenly it's going to stand out. And obviously that I'm going to be looking for it. And I take umbrage with the fact that we always talk about the view of this place from 123. No one is looking at this place when they are driving down 123. They are not considering it at that point other than, hey, maybe I should stop there. The view of this place is more critical from the center of that quad and how we captured that environment. And it's nothing against you, Joe, about that. I'm just saying that's the space that if you're going to interpret it, and I will agree with you that a parcel of green off to the right, where Bunnyman is not going to detract from the space of the quad, particularly because you have a quad that now has a lot of sidewalk and a lot of access ways that weren't there historically. You have a whole alleyway for one of the pottery sections that has a full concrete yard. Wasn't full concrete back then. I mean, we've got various types, as well as the entranceway and the whole planting thing that I don't know, maybe it wasn't your firm that had part to design that entryway in the center with the stuff that we went through a few years back. I mean, we've got all these changes here. I think the key thing for me was always openness, that space is always meant to be open. That has been my biggest worry, is doing something that kind of takes away from that feel that you would have in a prison space, which we're not trying to capture feeling like a prison, but there is a line of sights. Everything was open. There is not a hiding place. So I think in this situation, yeah, we got to keep eyes on everyone, but I think this doesn't bother me that much. But I think the next time it comes, it's going to, because I was looking at the center, I'm like, I don't know why we haven't proposed it in the center, but I forgot, as you said, that was an idea that was brought up.
Engineered out.
Yeah, because I remember we heard all the complaints about the drainage in the center area. It was a disaster. So, I mean,
Well, this could be a good.
it could be a good test case.
Well, yeah.
No. Yeah. I'm not.
Carry on. Thank you. Is that, well, I'm sorry, you didn't call me, so can I talk?
You may.
I was gonna say is that, I thought of some of these things when I was out there. I said, well, the other option is, well, pave the whole thing, so we don't have any differences in grass. So it's concrete or brick. That is always an option. More money, but gives you more permanency and so forth. I think that could maybe be down the road, but I doubt it very much. But if we do have a concern about where synthetic turf wants to go, I think we should take a look at the master plan maybe at some point and designate areas where synthetic turf would be acceptable as it goes down the road, at least in our minds. And maybe it's not published well, that we can feel that, okay, we know when someone comes in for here, like the other house across the way like this, should that be synthetic turf too? If it depends upon the use. So it balances out if we're concerned about that. And other areas, because I'll be honest with you, there's other areas that are not even developed yet. I think this could be a good area, like by the music bar or something like that. I don't know, because there's gonna be a lot of activity that's gonna help that. We're gonna demand something, again, the use of this prison yard was not for cornhole and people congregating on picnic tables. It was raking leaves out of the grass, and that was probably it, because you couldn't hang out in the yard. So I think the uses have changed from what it is right now. So we have to get a surface in here that will perpetuate a good longevity of the property, as opposed to being a nuisance that it'll not be a successful property in the future. So I do respect everybody's opinion, and you know where I feel about it, but I think it was a good midline. But I do respect the thought that in the wintertime, this will look kind of intriguing and interesting. Hey, it's all that. Well, we can always spray brown paint on it and then just wash it off in the spring. I don't know. Now we got to make that synthetic turf that changes with the season. That's the next one on the line. That'd be nice.
Well, like heat activated.
AI is here, man.
Mr. Daniel.
My only other question is, and this is because I'm not a landscape architect, do we have enough to act time? Because Joe, you mentioned other things you might like to see, but none of those things are here in this package.
Yeah.
All I see here is approximate, and then when I saw the red box, it looked at first I thought, oh, we're doing not just Bunnyman, the parking lot around Bunnyman, we're doing W15. The description and the pictures show me the approximate area, but I hear grading, I hear, you're suggesting going around the corners, but I'm worried there's not something actionable enough to say that this is what we know exactly what's going to be produced. And I don't know if that's because it's something that's missing in this materials. I don't know if that's something else that I don't know how this is going to be submitted and processed through the county. Is this all that was going to be here, or would there be any other more detailed materials to make sure that the folks actually completing the work know this is where this stuff goes? Like,
What permit are they calling?
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm getting.
A permit, because this is this is more than 2,500 square feet. How many square feet is this? 660.
Yeah, there's no permit required.
I thought it was more. Okay.
Okay. So, this is me not knowing about that type of, you're building a house. I know all the things, and I got a lot of folks here who immediately tell you you're missing things and the house won't stand up.
You bring up a good question though, because when I was putting this together, I was like, I think we just need the presentation, and because there is international, similar to the tree plantings that we did that was approved in October.
Right.
No permit with it, so we provided very detailed presentation. But yeah, it's really just that little grass area.
I think if we were to approve something, we'd have to be very prescriptive into exactly what we would be approving to see, and that language would need to be there.
I agree.
For me to feel comfortable saying yes, and not to necessarily say you're going to something wild with artificial turf, but we're talking about a certain area, and Joe talked about a very specific description that he was envisioning. I want to make sure that's matching up with what actually is going to happen.
Well, I was going to say is, would the applicant, what I suggested out on the site visit and tonight, do you plan on doing what I suggest, or just the turf? If it's just the turf, we don't have to mention the other stuff.
And you're referring to just the wraparound, like.
Wrap around to the turf, the sidewalk, and the concrete area to the left.
And I think the consensus while we were on site, while was that it would look a lot cleaner if it was continuous.
It's not in your application. I think it's what.
It's not in the application because unfortunately that came about kind of on Monday. However, we did work with the vendor, and they will be doing that there isn't even a change order with it. So it's just.
Right now, it's not in your application, so we can't really approve unless we put it into the motion, right? Is that what I kind of hear, or not?
If Mr. Burns also has a comment,
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Okay, first thing, I agree with Mr. Daniel. I think we might be able to construct it to say that we approve the placement of artificial turf within the bounds of the existing concrete sidewalk. And that would include the little L that goes up. So just, that's a simple description. But then the more curious question I have is, since you mentioned this is 100 square feet, it's under the minimum that's required to trigger a building permit, why are we considering this? Our
Yeah, I wasn't even gonna ask that, John,
triggerable
but-
by required building permit. So why is this coming before us?
Because
It's the MOA, I think, isn't it?
any action that affects any action in Lorton has to come to the Architectural Review Board, whether it's.
Okay, so this is bound by the MOA
Yes,
with,
yes,
okay, all right, that's,
MOA.
thank you, that answers that question. Okay.
And if I can just interject, we did hear from VDHR, not in time to get the information to you, but they did not have, they found no adverse effect.
And as, if I could say one more thing, following up with Joe's suggestion, on the driveway side, the drive that is between this and the former gym building, that grass there is not very great either. I was just curious as to why you wouldn't include that.
Which grass are you referring to?
I'm talking
Where to
about
stop it.
the entrance drive into the plaza that's between this building and the adjacent gymnasium across the drive.
Oh, I
There's a
see.
strip of
Yeah, I see where you're talking about.
basically clay, just sitting there. And you've got the foundations of the new second floor egress, and such, and it's one of the major pathways to get to your business, anybody who parks behind your building. And so they have to walk down that, sidewalk.
I think that would be more noticeable because that's the main drive.
Yeah, I know,
It
but,
just needs better maintenance. I think the road
Okay,
needs better
okay,
maintenance. I
yes,
think that's the
yes.
issue there.
and perhaps it was because I was there shortly after you opened and nothing had happened with the treatment of the ground after the construction was complete, but
That's a good catch.
yeah.
Something.
Any other comments from board members?
I prefer that we not do it with a written, I mean, we require everybody to get it right so that it's graphically correct to go to her and so that doesn't create extra work, just given my opinion.
Mhm.
That possibly they just need that one extra, this is where we're doing it and just my opinion.
It potentially could come back on consent, right?
Yes.
If it's given to us in the package and we all look at it. Excellent.
Yeah, normally Denise and I have a conversation about what comes as a consent item and what does not. Mr. Daniel.
Normally I'm also the same stickler on this position. My only hesitance is what are we gonna get that's much different if it is such a small action? Like, we're not looking for a landscape plan because this doesn't rise to the level of that. Are we just looking for a graphical representation that shows us exactly that and where the two tree locations are gonna occur? I'm just trying to make sure if we were to ask an applicant to do this, I'd want them to come back with something that's like, well, this is what you wanted. And because I understand what you're doing based on the discussion tonight. I think I have an understanding of it fully, but I'm also trying to think about what does that look like? What more work are we asking for? That is a product that can be produced. Like when we say that for a bigger project,
Yeah.
we can literally say, well, you're missing these portions of the plans, and without those, come back. Go to your architect, please, and come back. But I asked that as someone who's not a landscape architect, so.
Yeah.
Can I just make a suggestion? Is that perhaps in the motion, you could say that the applicant provides a plan indicating the limits of synthetic turf on a site plan, not an area footage, on a site plan, which you have access to of where the synthetic turf is and where the proposed concrete areas would be for Denise to approve based upon. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Instead of having them come back, because I know they're somewhat of a time sensitive because activity
That's gonna
level
be my
increases.
sensitivity.
Well, let me ask that question because I was going to ask this question. I was waiting for everybody else to be done because what I didn't hear was a timeline.
The timeline would be to get this work complete by the end of March for spring and summer event.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Free beers for everyone. No, I'm just joking.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other comments? And I think Mr. Daniel has been heartily working on a potential motion, so you have the
Try.
floor.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB approve action item ARB 25 LOR 03 located at 9514 Workhouse Way, Lorton, in the Lorton Laurel Hill MOA eligible district for the proposed replacement of natural grass with synthetic turf product as submitted and presented at the March 13th ARB meeting, subject to the following modifications. That the placement of the proposed turf occur only within the bands of the existing sidewalk which surrounds W3 and include the relocation of 2 trees to the east. Additionally, the applicant shall provide a site plan to heritage staff showing the entire returfing location for the file. Further, any changes to the application from what was approved tonight must return to the ARB upon review of the materials. The proposal is found to meet the requirements of the memorandum of agreement, Lorton Laurel Hill eligible district and zoning ordinance 3101 historic overlay districts.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Burns. Denise and Ryan, is that doable? We have that? Okay. And I would like to make a friendly amendment because I believe Mr. Daniel misspoke and said building W3 and it's building W13.
Did I? Then yes,
W3.
W13. W3 can get grass too.
Okay, excellent.
I'd make a friendly amendment.
Mr. Plumpy, yeah, that was mine. So,
I would also like to have the applicant add the location of proposed concrete on their plan as well, where that would be in addition to the synthetic turf, if the applicant desires to do so. That's one thing. The other would be,
I'm not following what you.
the concrete would be upper right, upper left-hand corner between the sidewalk and the building. That's where it's heavily used.
Is it surrounded by the sidewalk that surrounds building W13?
Yeah, there's,
That was my goal, was to cover everything that was surrounded by the
Okay.
sidewalk.
I thought you were just thinking just synthetic turf only. Just had the word concrete.
I said synthetic turf.
Yes, I was adding concrete to it, to the area that is planned north of the entrance, rear entrance.
Go point at it up there.
right here is basically,
Not synthetic turf, but the area north of it, Yeah, there
Yes.
you go. That would be
there's 4 feet right there.
But what about from the east-west sidewalk to the face of the building?
No, that stays turf.
Turf.
So it's just that strip between the corner of the building.
I mean, I follow what he's touching. I didn't catch that.
So why does that need to be concrete?
Why does that need to be concrete?
Right now it is, it's trampled upon and it's a service back door. It's not necessary. I suggest that from a service standpoint, because it just was a mess, but you don't have to.
But they also have all sorts of tanks and equipment along that
Yeah,
back wall that's going to get trampled down for access and maintenance and stuff like that. I was
actually,
curious as to why you weren't proposing it there.
that's really not being trampled upon, by the tanks, which is interesting. It's just that backside.
I would rather not accept that friendly
Okay.
amendment. Take that.
So in other words, just for everyone's clarity, we would say everything that's within the sidewalks of building W13 would be synthetic turf.
Correct.
Just want to make sure that we have it. Okay.
Well, just where the seating areas, you don't want synthetic turf on the.
They can, or I don't think they're required. I guess if they decide to keep it as grass, they can keep it as grass. I mean,
I don't agree with that, but that'd be fine.
So based on the,
I have some,
Yes.
let me back it up.
Yeah.
Part of my,
I think this is going to be this.
sorry, part of my, that this is appropriate is that it's adjacent, that's a patio, right? And there's chairs. And that it's like, almost like a paving material for recreation and
Yes.
to the brewery. And
Yep.
that's part of the need for this and why I think it's part of the adaptive use argument that it's making this building viable for its new use. So I don't think that it needs to go on the other side because that's not being used in the same way.
When you say the other side, where
The
Say
shaded,
north of the
Where the shadow.
entry door.
the shadow is, well, let me tell you something. I have been to this brewery multiple times.
okay, I haven't.
Everybody that goes there walks in that shaded area.
On the sidewalk.
No, not all of them walk on the sidewalk. A lot of them walk on the grass
They can't walk straight.
because people are taking shortcuts around that corner because
The corner-
staying on the sidewalk and walking to the brick and through the entryway is too hard for a lot of people. So a lot of people.
But I'm not,
On the
I'm not
grass.
approving it based on aesthetics as much as I am
The use.
use. So,
You have a motion on the floor. Seems like one amendment was accepted, the second.
Yeah, there's a motion, there's a second. It's my understanding that my friendly amendment was accepted.
Yes.
Mr. Plumpett's was not accepted. And I think it's probably safest to do a roll call vote on this particular motion. So that's what I'm going to do.
Call the
I'm-
question.
Yeah, we're going to vote. So yay or nay, everybody I think knows what we're voting on right now. I'll start with Ms. Hammack and go around. So Ms. Hammack,
yes.
Mr. Kalinsky,
Yes.
Ms. Orr.
I'm not, are we voting on his amendment?
This was not
His
accepted.
amendment was.
Okay, okay, then yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Mr. Plumpy,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Ms. Wong,
Yes.
and Mr. Petty.
I'll abstain since I'm.
You'll abstain, and Ms. Mangum.
Yes.
Less controversial than I thought. Okay, so that is adopted 9-0 with one abstention. It's approved. I think you understand what was approved, but if you have any questions, obviously you could talk to Denise.
The only thing, the trees, just per your, they would actually go to the west, I think. That was my only kind of,
Yes.
I think you said east,
That's correct.
They're moved from the east. We need to make a motion to make that correction.
They're right.
Hold on a second, let's check a minute. Hold on, just go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
I think I said east.
You did say east. Yes, you did.
Sorry, I should have chimed in earlier.
Okay. Did it say?
Just a friendly correction.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do it again. Yes,
Mr. Chair, I move that we correct the previous motion
okay,
to revise the direction suggested for relocating the trees to the west or to the east, from the east to the west.
okay. Is there a second?
I second the.
Mr. Burns, you accept that?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any
Aye.
abstentions? That motion carries.
There
Thank
we
you,
go.
sir.
Thank you for catching that.
Thanks for your time.
No, thank you.
Or I would have expected those trees exactly where I thought they were.
They might have been in the parking lot, I don't know. Okay, so our third item for action is ARB 25-LFK-01 1102 Chain Bridge Road, revision to ARB approved design. The ARB reviewed and approved this design for the construction of a new single-family dwelling on the property on June 9, 2022. Applicant is seeking approval for modifications to the ARB approved design to align with the as-built structure. Mr. Kayvon Jabori represents the application. And Mr. Jabori, before you begin, I believe Ms. Dressel has just a brief presentation to compare what we approved to what was built, because there are some members on the board who weren't here in 2022.
Of course.
This isn't something that we typically do, but we got lots of questions, so I thought we would just run through it at a very high level. Okay. So, I'm sorry, go forward, Jonathan, thanks. Orienting you to where this is in the Langley Fork Historic Overlay District, you can see, yeah, right there, thank you. So at the time of approval, the ARB approved the construction of the new single-family dwelling at 1102 Chainbridge Road as submitted and presented with the following addition, that the construction documents that are submitted accurately reflect the 3D front elevation view and the 4 new renderings provided at the June 9th, 2022 ARB meeting. So essentially, the renderings did not match the drawings that were submitted at that time. But what was approved were the renderings, so the conceptual drawings. So that's what was approved. And this is just a comparison between what was approved and what was built. Go ahead. Thank you. So on the left is the front elevation of what the Architectural Review Board approved. And on the right is a photo that was taken by one of the board members and provided to staff in the fall of 2023. And as you can see, there are just some very quickly and very high level, you can see some discrepancies. So staff met with the applicant in January of 2024. We went over some of the discrepancies that we were seeing. And from there, they made some modifications to their construction. So now we move forward into next, Jonathan, thank you. And this is the same elevation in 2025, just about a month ago. So there have been some modifications to bring the constructed building into conformance with what the Architectural Review Board approved. Next slide, please. Something that staff still had a question about was the interplay between the vertical plane of the front wall, the facade, and the gabled sort of the little things that jut out from the gables. So we still have a question about that, and we felt it was important to bring that back to the Architectural Review Board to take a look at. Next slide, please. The other thing that we have seen, that we see is discrepancies in the canopy that overhangs the front entryway and the windows that have been installed, size and type. Next slide, please. This is just more detail of the canopy and the windows. Next slide, please. And this is the garage elevation, which is on the right side of the front. And again, showing the window, just the difference in the window. And I believe, oh no, there's one more. And this is the northeast elevation, the side elevation on the driveway side. Windows, missing windows above the garage, above that second bay on the right. And I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And this is,
Good evening,
Where you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Kayvan Jabouti. I am the civil engineer for the project and of course presenting the case. Correctly said, there are discrepancies and inconsistencies between what was constructed and what was approved. Some of it has been corrected. The canopy, I'm going to try to the best of my ability to go through one by one. The ones that we have a positive outcome, I'm going to highlight first. If I may ask to go to slide number 11, please. Yes, this one, thanks. These photos were taken 2 days ago. The front canopy above the front door has been corrected, identical to what was approved. In regards with the gables at the rooftop, I am being told that there were a couple of reasons for it. One indeed was the carpenter's mistake. However, the renderings that were provided during ARB review did not take into account for the downspouts and gutters. And after the facade was constructed, they installed the gutters, and they for that level of development, they wanted them to be interior. so they needed to cover them. I'm being told that's the reason there is a discrepancy. The architect and the owner can expand on that if it's deemed necessary. In regards to the windows, the owner, there was originally an approved plan, and we have a stamped architectural drawings with what is constructed, and then the ARB made a change to the approval. And that change did not get communicated to the manufacturer. So the taller windows came to the site, and it wasn't caught because the owner was on vacation and the people installed it anyways. The difference in the garage window is that the owner entered into a contract with a purchaser, which neither here nor there, that has gone to the wayside because they were supposed to deliver between December and January. And here we are, almost April, and the house wasn't delivered, so they walked. They, for security reasons, they did not want to have the double pane window. They wanted a narrower window, so there is less visual into the garage. The owner had planned on coming back to the ARB. He was aware of the need for a revision approval with the ARB, along with addition of a gazebo and some changes to the size of the pool and all, that all of this came about and it never happened. And here we are. In regards with the windows, I recall on a different matter with the ARB, I was here, and pictures of the site were brought to our attention with some rectangular windows above the garage doors. Those have been enclosed. There are no openings there anymore. In regards with the missing windows, they have been ordered. They were supposed to be in last week. There was a delay in delivery. They will be installed. So the garage side is going to match exactly what the approved ARB plans call for. And we can provide you either with pictures, or if a member of the zoning department wants to go visit and take more pictures, or more than one. So that will get done. The developer, the owner, has planted shrubberies. If you go to slide known and the same slide 11. Can we go to either 11 or 3 that is provided by the planning and development? They have planted shrubbery in front of the windows, so the visual effect sort of mimics the height of the window, how low they get. If it is more acceptable to plant taller greenery and shrubbery, the developer and the owner is willing to do that. We are proposing to make, if we go to slide 7, please. These are the circled areas of all the revisions that we're proposing, that we're seeking your approval on to change the plans to what was constructed exactly. So in a way, we are here to get guidance how you would like us to move forward.
All right. I will turn it over to, well, first of all, do any members of the public have any comments? Okay, then I'll turn to my fellow board members for comments.
I have a question.
Ms. Orr first.
All those drawings. I didn't get that in my packet. Did I miss something?
This is.
No, that one I have.
Presentation. This is the presentation.
So it didn't come to me ahead of time.
This is from the presentation. Yes, the application is different from the presentation, and this is what Mr. Jabouri is presenting tonight.
Because I sure would have liked to have seen, because you were just showing a bunch of elevations, and at this stage, this is still a wish list to me. We expect to see working drawings. Don't just send me a rendering. You can't get a building permit with a rendering. I want to see exactly what this elevation is going to look like, not, well, we're going to affect that some way. That doesn't tell me how you're going to affect it.
Mr. Sell, I believe in the application package, I provided some colored renderings. Very, very confident that I did.
Jonathan, can you go to the application package, please?
So
I have 2 or 3 renderings in the application package.
Mr. Zellman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh.
Mr. Dan.
So we do have color renderings. I was asked the same question Ms. Orr was going to ask. So we have some renderings in what I think is the package that is for the new changes, but the only drawing, which was kind of what Ms. Orr said very clearly, is you've got that section showing the circles of the various elements. I would be expecting what that's going to translate to from actual work. For perhaps the windows, that's a little easier to show, hey, this is what we're going to change there. But for these corners on the gables, I mean, I would love to understand what's going to happen there, but I don't. I mean, you have pictures showing certain things, but that doesn't necessarily translate to.
The renderings are what got us in trouble to begin with, because detailing this type of element requires, am I wrong, an interior gutter? I mean, it's quite a beautiful solution, but the gutter is the problem. So, and it's an expensive solution.
Yeah. Would you like to come here?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Are you proposing to keep the notches on the gable or get rid of them?
We're just saying what happened.
So
The
those
notches,
circles are
the
just
wings.
explain what is in non-compliancy.
These were your comments, so just
Okay, so-
sample them.
What do you propose to do? You want us to approve it as built and approve those little notches on the gable?
We'd like to approve it as built, and the reason is because of the mistake was made. The carpenter extended the roof to the front wall.
Yeah, no, I understand what
And the
happened.
gutter went down in that corner. So
Yeah.
to demolish that, we have to demolish all sides of the building entirely.
What was that? This sounds harsh, but your lack of planning doesn't constitute an emergency on my part. Like when it was discovered in the field that it needed to be changed, then you should have come back to us, or you should develop your plans to that level of detail before coming to us.
Well, I'm just saying what happened.
If you had presented that at your first meeting, which I wasn't in attendance because I wasn't on the board yet, I would never have approved a detail like that. So I'm not going to approve it after the fact.
The detail wasn't this, but it just happened. I'm just saying what happened. You can approve it or not approve it. I'm just saying what happened. To redo this and correct it, he has to demolish all the corners of that wall, the entire front of the house. So it's up to you. If you want to say, go ahead, demolish the house, correct
I want
that.
to correct.
We can get that little notch there. That's up to you and up to him if he wants.
Well, can we go back to the very first rendering, Denise, like what was presented in June? In 2022?
I think, is that art? That might be art.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that in your presentation, Mr. Chipori? Okay. Yeah, I think.
Sure.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
We
the
can
roof
do the-
ends behind the wall.
No, I don't want to talk about those anymore. I'll just talk briefly about the very first approval in June 2020.
Oh, so.
I think it was in your presentation, Denise.
So, yeah, and you're,
Can you go to our PowerPoint?
and then I'll let everyone else speak.
There we go. Okay, so
You go to the front.
go to the first, there we go.
Okay, when I look at the approved 3D front elevation, I see a very simplified, modern interpretation of a Tudor. Okay, I see the windows, I see the gables, and I see the architecturally articulated overhang, and arguably maybe some of the proportions. The elements that gave this home a style have been eroded. The windows, the fenestration pattern, the rhythm, and the really most ornate feature, the overhang, which I don't think you've corrected based on, I don't think what you built matches this rendering. So the spirit of the first approval, again, I wasn't there in 2022, I feel it's been lost. And that it doesn't, the argument for why this first approval is appropriate, I don't think is still maintains with the changes that have been made. So that's, I think maybe we should go back to the beginning, like why did the board find it appropriate in the first place, and are those things still present?
Mr. Daniel.
So backtracking a little, I think still to Ms. Orr's comment, I think I'm a little confused because if we were talking about this in a conceptual idea that you want to come back and seek approval for design changes, I would get what we got in our submission package and it would make sense. We just want to start talking about it. But this is an application, so it seems like something that was expecting a vote. But we would want to see, I'd want to see, well, here's where we're going to do the demolition. Here's what's going to be removed or changed in each of these, because we'd want to approve that exact things that your contractor is going to then undertake in the field. So that's part of the confusion I think you're seeing from Ms. Orr and I is what's in the materials we got is perfectly adequate to have a conversation about what might happen, but definitely not sufficient to have to actually approve an action. And that's what's, I think, bothering me is this is presented as an application for approval and vote, but it feels more like we're having a workshop session on it. And we're in, I would also describe unfamiliar territory here because this is not a regular occurrence of having something come back, because of changes in the field here. But I just don't feel like there's anything that we could vote on to say, we agree you do this, because I would expect, here's our demolition plan on the front facade. We're going to remove this or change that. Or even just as an example, because if we took the rendering that we approved then, the portions of the gable that are now white and very prominent against that more flat facade were flashed or proposed, had a material differentiation that made them step back from the main portions of the building. At least that's what's visualized in the rendering, but it's definitely not reflected in what was constructed. So there's that, you have this weird creature here instead of this prominent facade feature that maybe there are changes you could do to make that happen, but I don't know what those are because I'm definitely not the architect, but I'm not seeing any way that we can differentiate that. Instead, they look like it's both a parapet and a gable merged together into one creature. And that's not what the board was looking at when we went along with going with the renderings. But there's nothing here to say, here's how we'll get to that. Here's how we'll achieve that in the materials we have. So I'm reluctant to workshop on that without any idea. I mean, principally, we'd rather just have it go back to what we wanted to see it be. That would be ideal. But I don't know if that's achievable, given whatever costs you have to obviously deal with, because I recognize this is an actual project, but that's what I personally would like. And that's, I mean, that's my general take, that there's nothing for me to vote on here that I could say, then we could give you a mandate to say, okay, Mr. Jabori, go do this. Then you can correct it. And we think we're back to something that's acceptable. I just see areas where, hey, these are places where you need to make changes, but I brought you to tell me what you could or could not do so that we could give you our feedback on what is in the realm of possibilities. And we could take a vote one way or another. I'm going a little too far, but I feel like I'm just trying to diagnose it all to you.
I personally appreciate your detailed feedback. To get to the bottom of it, we would like to bring in a revision to the approved plan that matches what was constructed. That's what we intend to do.
So to revise, basically, the plans will just reflect, this is what we've constructed, obviously reflecting the change you've done to over the front entryway that has just recently happened.
It happened.
Yeah.
72 hours ago.
Yeah, but that's, so, but that would, those plans would reflect that change. But you all would rather say, let's vote on what we built and move forward with it.
If the board isn't comfortable doing that, we're not in any position to ask for that.
I mean, I appreciate you being candid about it, though. That really helps me understand where you're coming from.
I think you and I have talked to each other in this setting enough that I'm a straight shooter. I don't mess around. It has happened. I'm not arguing that.
Well, I think, Mr. Jabouri, now that I'm the chairman, normally I go last. I'm gonna say something just because I want to go off what Mr. Daniels said, and I appreciate what your intent is. I think the problem is I don't, and I'm speaking for me, I'm not speaking for everybody. I don't know if I can approve what was already built because I still don't feel like I have a good handle at what that is compared to what we approved. I mean, I've seen a presentation from Ms. Dressel. I've seen your presentation. I see some differences, but I still don't have something concrete. And I think this probably goes back again to what Ms. Orr and Mr. Daniels said at the beginning, to know what you're actually seeking us to approve. And I appreciate what you've said tonight is, ultimately what we want is you to approve what's been constructed. But I still, I don't think I'm alone, but my opinion is I don't have enough information to do that tonight, to know that one way or the other. I'm not even saying I'm saying I don't know. Mr. Daniel.
So in the spirit of trying to find a way, because I recognize that I'm not going to vote on anything to be approved tonight. I want to be very clear on that. So here's the things that I think would help me get closer to something that I perhaps could vote yay on. That garage window needs to be fixed to what we proposed. Security, I mean, you got giant windows everywhere else, so I don't understand the security risk, because when someone goes into, functionality of this building was kind of reliant on windows having proportionality in their facades. That's not there. The little vents up in the top, they're white. Everything here we had was much more standing them out, so they stood out a little bit more. That needs to be fixed there too. In addition to that, I think there needs to be some type of elegant flashing or some type of design solution done to that parapet gable combination that somehow, I would hope that you could try to think of a way to differentiate it, because I think we liked the idea that there was this more, I think Ms. Hammock described it well, kind of a Tudorish idea to it. It had some class to it. Now it just looks like a hodgepodge, and you were working, your contractors and your workers were dealing with the constraints they were on. What can we do materials wise? What can we do color wise? What can we do to make that differentiate itself? That's going to be some of my big key things. You're saying the windows on the other side are going to match what should be there. The drawings and everything should reflect that that's what's going to be there. That's what I could care less about landscaping, because bushes and trees die. As you just saw, we just moved around trees and bushes and turf just in the last action item, willy-nilly. So those things, are so temporal in my mind, but those would be steps. And the fact that you've made corrections to the porch, I think that's help. I still felt the porch was at an angle a little bit more, so you actually saw something there of a bit of a roof, but maybe that's just not what I'm seeing in the picture. Those are the things I would have to start seeing to go, okay, we're getting closer to what we saw here. That's me personally. I know other folks here might just say, well, just rebuild the whole thing. And that could be a completely honest opinion from them. And they might still vote no. But that's, for me, I think those things have to happen for me to ever get to a yes.
I'm hopeful that members of the board are more pragmatic than asking us to tear this thing down and start all over.
I just want to reflect the whole spectrum of views here, that folks could say that, and they're entitled to do it. They're totally entitled to.
Yeah, Mr. Burns.
We're talking about this, and we're coming at it from two different perspectives. One is the perspective of evaluating it against prior approval. And the other is whether or not there's adequate information in this particular application to take an action. So in my mind, the lack of adequate information trumps any discussion about whether or not it's too close or too differentiated from the earlier approved design. And we should just focus on the fact that we don't have enough information to make a reasonably intelligent decision based on the information that's in front of us.
Right.
It's simply not adequate. And if I had a recommendation, I would move that we defer this until the applicant can provide an adequate application for our consideration.
Any other comments? Ms. Hammond?
If we do that, then I would like to know what windows were installed, like a cut sheet, a spec sheet, materials, the mutton profiles, because they're black. And I don't really, obviously we can't say no renderings, but like moving forward, I would like to rely more on dimension drawings and specs. I can read an architectural drawing perfectly well and an engineering drawing, very confident. And that is what I would like to see. And I have faith in my board members to interpret them as well. So I'd like to move away from renderings on this project.
Okay, any other comments? The only thing that I would add to that, Mr. Jabouri, and this is for me, but I think my board members would agree, is I think what we're saying is, I think if it's your desire to come in here to, what it sounds like, to get us to approve what's been as built, I think you have to treat it as like, this is the first time you're applying and proposing to us, and we need all that information, those drawings, the materials that are being used, that's what we're going to need to approve what's been, to consider what's been built. So I think having that information would be helpful. Mr. Daniel.
And I completely agree with Mr. Burns that this isn't something we can take action on, but for the sake of being a board that's trying to find a way to meet in the middle on this, I wanted you to know the things that are going to stand out to me whenever it does come back with plans. And as Mr. Zellman said, if it comes back and this is what we built and we want you to approve it as built, we vote, we may have to do a roll call vote likely, but those are the things I would need rectified to understand and potentially agree that we've found a compromise in design. Because right now we don't have anything to really give you, a vote on at this moment. I just want to clarify, I'm just trying to find a way that, given the fact that if it does get rejected, an applicant can take it for appeal to the board of supervisors too. So I want to, as a member of this board, I want to be as helpful as I can be, despite not necessarily being super excited about necessarily the
I
situation.
appreciate your candor in that. But in respect to Ms. Hammock's comment regarding cut sheets for the windows and all of that, these are stamped approved architectural drawings. This project being in the historic overlay district, it wouldn't get approved by building review unless the ARB had approved it, correct? Therefore, repeat of providing cut sheets for the windows could be something that may not be necessary because it was provided. That's why these plans are approved.
You did not, first of all, you purchased the windows. So there are drawings of those windows already done by the manufacturer that made those windows. So it shouldn't, I'm not asking you to go home and draw windows, okay? Number two, you didn't install the windows that the board approved in 2022. So we need to see drawings of the windows.
I have to say, we approved a rendering. We didn't approve a line drawing of what they were submitting for permit, and that is
We can learn from our
fault.
mistakes.
That's the
Now you're in front of us, so we can learn from our mistakes and we can ask for better drawings. Or I can ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mr. Jabour, you have our opinions. I don't know that further discussion this evening is going to get us any further. What I can tell you is you have the choice. You can have us take an up or down vote on this, or we can defer it. That means we just don't take any action and we move it to a future meeting. But we have to vote one way or the other because it's an action item. So we can either vote yes or no on it, or we can vote to defer it. And it's your choice what you want us to do.
Second, sure. Would you like to defer it or you want? Let's defer.
Okay, I need a motion. Yes, Mr. Dana.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB defer action item ARB 25 LFK 01 located at 1102 Chainbridge Road, clean in the Langley Fork Historic Overlay District for modifications to the previously approved ARB design as submitted and presented at the March 13th ARB meeting. The motion to defer is due to insufficient materials for the ARB to take action on.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I got Mr. Burns first. So Ms. Orr, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion to defer is approved. And Mr. Jabouri, you're welcome to come back next month or whatever point in time in the future, and we'll consider it then.
Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. All right, that takes us out of our items for action. We do not have any items for workshop this month. We do have a presentation, the 2025 update to the ARB on workhouse activities, an overview of campus activity provided by the Department of Economic Initiatives. Sir.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And I was really heartened by the architectural review discussion of the item earlier at the workhouse. And so I think it really lays the stage for why we wanted to come and talk to you just in general about all the activities that are going on at the site. You can go to the next page. Slide. I think we last came, the Architectural Review Board is a key stakeholder in helping us to activate and really transform the workhouse campus to bring in that community use and frankly, a lot of the ideas of your founding document that you read at the beginning of this meeting really took the economic, the community gathering spaces, et cetera. And so you've been a key stakeholder. And I think we came in 2003 or 23, gave you a little bit of an overview of what's happening. Wanted to come back and talk about the efforts that you did last year in 2024, how that impacted the campus, and then start to lay out some items that you'll see later this year that'll probably come back for action as well. So again, the Workhouse Arts Campus, there was a lot of discussion earlier. I think most of you are familiar with it. If you can go to the next slide. But there's been a lot of changes in 2024. One of the biggest was the renovations for those two front buildings that were on discussion earlier today, 13 and 15, and that kind of grassy boardwalk area in between. And then really the opening of Bunny Man Brewing Cafe, which opened last weekend, June in 2024, and really operated. They probably operated, I think, 4 days a week to 5 days a week through 2024, and they've now expanded operations. They're open 7 days a week, bringing in more and more customers. And you'll see the impact if you go to the next slide. Not only their activities, but the activities of the Workhouse Arts Foundation have really had on visitation. Visitation numbers increased by 50%, went from about 100,000 to 150,000 just last year. And we think that'll continue to grow, and that's really showing those investments that you all have reviewed and approved, particularly in kind of that curb appeal down there. I mentioned the upgrades to 13 and 15, which are on the Richmond Highway, Route 123. But we also did major improvements to, honestly, parking lot paving. That place in the field there is so different that those parking lots have been paved and improved, and a lot of the improvements and again, the action that you took today. So you can see the annual visitation numbers have really grown. If you go to the next page, really one of the key signature annual events down there is the fireworks festival that the Workhouse Arts Foundation puts on. They had over 6,000 attendees for that event last year. And you can really see how that's bounced back. 2020, obviously those were canceled during COVID, but you can really see that growth and that activation down there. And I know Keith Gordon, and if you go to the next slide, I think we've got Keith on the next one. Yep. And the other big improvement down there has been Keith. The Workhouse Arts Foundation is our primary nonprofit tenant down there. They operate in about 11 of the buildings, and they brought on Keith as the CEO earlier this year. And so I wanted to have a chance for him to meet you and have a chance to hear from him about what he's doing down at the site and activating it.
First thing we're going to do is we're going to airbrush this picture just a little bit, clean it up, roll back. It's, first of all, let me just say it's a pleasure to be in front of you. It's also a real treat to see you guys actually tackling some of the issues that you've been dealing with tonight and to understand the way you go through them, the level of specificity you're looking for. I've certainly heard some of these things. I've been there 8 months, and one of the first things I ever heard was about, you know, the level of different approvals that you have to go through because of the nature of the property. And it just even listening to the way that you refer to the property as, you know, an adaptive reuse project. I mean, it's really enlightening the more I am there and the more I'm able to see the potential. You know, my background's just to give you guys a little bit more information. I spent the bulk of my career, almost 25 years in professional sports, left to go to the nonprofit space, ran a nonprofit in DC for 9 years, took 6 months off, took some time on the beach,
thought it was the best thing in the world, and then got the itch to go back. And this was a project where I just couldn't resist. It was just a diamond in the rough. My son played baseball for years in South County and all over the fields, and I would go by the workhouse every day and wonder, what is this place? Is it even open? To see that there's life now, to see that there's all of the investment that has been made, and of course, in the last couple of years, as Scott had said, the improvements just to the entryway, to be able to drive in and not feel like you're going to blow a tire in the parking lot, but also to see life, right? And to see people coming on campus, not only for activities, but for Bunny Man. But it's all just added a little bit more, visible activity and visible life. I think for me personally, it has been really an educational experience to go back and look at all the investments over time since this place really turned over. But some of the biggest investments in the last couple of years that have come before this board have really paid dividends. I think the improvements in the museum were significant. One of my biggest passions is preservation of history. And I think what we want to do moving forward in our new strategic plan is really embrace our history and utilize it to benefit our future. It's a key element in our story, and it will always be as long as I'm there. The improvements to the front area off of 123, just being able to look from, I'm guessing right now it's about 70 miles an hour that most people are driving by. You go from 40 to 70 coming in from Octagon, but stopping, people are looking and people are seeing life and activity. It's a really encouraging thing. As of now, we're doing about 800 events a year there, and that includes over 400 classes that we do on the education side. It includes the special events, like Scott mentioned, fireworks, the haunted activities. We've expanded our education program. We've invested in a new CRM database to actually focus on our education. Our performing arts program is just, completely going off the hook, gangbusters. We've had about a streak of about 6 total sold out shows in a row. We've been nominated for accolade after accolade. Our current play, Clydes, is already up for a Helen Hayes Award after its opening weekend. Great. So a lot to talk about. I think you guys know a little bit about our ceramics program. And some things that are coming online. Our kiln yard continues to inch closer and closer to coming online. We're in conversations with some local universities. We're in conversations with other folks that have expressed interest in not only doing some naming rights deals, but also as part of those things, bringing in equity in the arts programming. So as you probably know, we do an equity in the arts program for the military. Our military in the arts initiative, we just launched this year a Freedom Through the Arts initiative, which is similar to military in the arts, but it's for returned citizens, so formerly incarcerated people that can come back and use arts to heal. And then either this June or early July, I want to launch the Equity in the Arts program for young people. And so we're looking to partner with some of the community organizations in the area, bring them to the workhouse, have them experience what it's like to have exposure to the arts, and then provide transportation, provide meals, and provide a significant curriculum that will take them either through after-school programming or weekend programming. We just launched our camps. We just launched our spring quarter. We're seeing record numbers that we haven't seen before. And we're also looking at some subtenants that we have as well that are bringing increasing numbers of people to the campus. So there's a ton of activity. There's a ton of life. We've got our first strategic plan for the organization in over 6 years. We're on track to have our first balanced budget in over 4 years. And we have just a great team. Everybody's been there with the exception of one person. Everyone else in the campus has been there for either 13 months or less. We have one person that's been there since the very beginning, our performing arts director. But there's just this new energy. It's a new vibe. I think we have a great relationship with the county. We have a great relationship with our folks that come in and actually take classes and come there and volunteer and visit. And after 8 months, it feels like 8 years because I've been almost living down there. I like to joke and say, if you're ever tired and you want to sleep, there's beds in the prison. People do work. But it's awesome. I love it. And I can't wait to actually get back to work. We have our ball coming up, our annual gala, a week from Saturday, and we're bringing back a lot of other things. But our fireworks event is scheduled for June 28th, and just like Scott showed you in those numbers, I think we're going to have even more people on campus this year. We've partnered with even the I-95 landfill to host the fireworks, actually stage them on the landfill, so we can actually get more people on the campus and accommodate more families. So don't worry, it's not near the methane. We'll be okay. Need one quarry over there. We don't want another one, but it's just a really exciting opportunity to be at the workhouse at this particular moment. And I think that all of the investments that the county and that the ARB have made in beautifying this facility have given us some place where we don't have to look to the future. We can actually be in the present and actually make the most of the campus right now. So thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak in here.
And thank you. And so I was just going to highlight, if you can go to the next slide, a couple of key things that are happening now and that may come back to the ARB, or I think is important for you to understand. The county is currently undergoing a existing conditions report and assessing. Basically, the county strategy to date has been to really invest in and around the buildings on the quad. And so those are the buildings that WAF occupies, but there are a number of vacant buildings that are still around the quad. And so we're doing an existing conditions assessment, which will be done this year, to understand what's the structural integrity of those buildings, making sure that we're protecting those buildings, that they don't continue to degrade. What do we need to do to make them structurally sound if they are not? How can we prevent any additional degradation? And then from my perspective, most important, we get a really good understanding of what needs to be done in order to bring them back to occupancy. So if we enter into work with anybody else to come back to renovate those areas, to occupy them, we'll have a good understanding of where we're starting from. So those are underway. Keith mentioned that kiln roof yard activation. That's in that courtyard of 7 and 8. There was a building approved by the ARB a number of years ago. It's never been fully in operation to help them expand their ceramic and glass program. They're bringing that back online. And so that's underway. Paired with that, the adjacent building next to it, the county, this is the old glass blowing studio, if you've been down there. It was in operations for a while. It has ceased operations. And so the county is going in there and we're investigating that site to bring that back up and put that back online to, again, support the glass and the ceramics program, which I think is the most successful program and really needed in the area that WAF has seen.
So I'll just tell you, not to cut you off, Scott. Two things are glass and ceramics are the most popular education programs that we have. They make up over 50% of the overall programming. And education as a whole is 50% of our total revenue. The glass blowing capacity in particular, we have a larger glass blowing capacity just down at the workhouse, the largest in the entire region. So you'd have to go all the way up just north of Philadelphia to get close to what we have at the workhouse. And obviously, it's very exciting to be able to continue to expand and bring back molten glass work through the hot shop.
And then I think earlier at the action item, Jarrett mentioned the tree plantings that the ARB approved back in the fall. Those are actually getting installed starting next week, next Tuesday. And then we are still working on leasing of the W15. Again, Bunny Man went in and started operations for now 9 months. But that other building is now ready to go. And so we are currently seeking applicants or tenants for that site. And so that's underway, but we really hope that activation at the front of the campus really helps. Next thing that I can't just end on ups. So if you go to the next slide, the existing historic buildings that aren't around the quad are continuing to degrade in the 20 years since the county's owned them, and sometimes in the 100 years since they've existed. I know Board Member Plumpy, every time we're down there, talks about the ball field and the degradation that he sees with those bleachers. The original grandstand is mostly brick from 1929, but then there are additional changes that were made in the dugouts and the backstops that were done in the 50s. Those are mostly wood and not brick, and so they've really degraded significantly over the last 20 years. The heating plant, which is in the back, actually from this view, if you look at it, you can see that brick chimney that's in place. There are actually 4 exhaust pipes that you shouldn't be able to see any of them from this view, but you can see one that's teetering about 45 degrees. That's continuing to teeter over. Our facilities management department and the county has determined it is unsafe to get up there to keep it in place. And so we are managing how that is going to come down. But that is continuing to I don't know, fall victim to gravity. And so we're concerned about how that building will perform once that comes down. And then on the next page, we have had one pretty significant event, which is the physician's house, which is H49. If you're familiar, this is not on county operated land. This is actually on land that we leased to the Northern Virginia Regional Park for the operations of the Occoquan Regional Park. This is just north. If you were to enter into the park from their main entrance on 123, it's on the left-hand side, an area nobody really goes into very often. But this is the old physician's house. It had an addition that was added later in the back, a one-story addition on the back, and the roof is collapsed with that. So we're in the process. We have secured the site. It had fallen victim to some vandalism and misuse in the past. We've now secured the site to make sure that additional vandalism doesn't happen. And we're working with the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority to address that. But again, as for all the good stuff that we have been doing and investing in and around the workhouse in those core areas, there are those outlying buildings that are continuing to degrade. And so we're tracking those and want to make sure we're reporting back on the status of how we're maintaining those going forward. And so with that, I just, hopefully tee things up for some things that you'll see later this year. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sizer. Thank you, Mr. Gordon, for all your information. We appreciate it.
Still there.
Yeah, Mr. Burns.
Question. Can I make a recommendation for you guys?
Certainly.
Track down and reinstall the VDHR plaque for the women's workhouse. It's on the grounds of Fairfax Water across the way.
Yep, yeah.
And they somehow got it removed. And it's just disappeared from view. Nobody seems to know where it is, but it would be a nice public service if you guys put it on your side of the highway. It might be on the wrong side of the highway, but at least it's back.
Okay, we will look for that because, yeah, I remember.
People with something to read while we stop at the stoplight.
Thank you.
It's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us into board and staff items. First up is review and action and approval of the previous month's minutes. Did anyone have any changes to the February 2025 minutes? If not, Mr. Daniel.
I move the ARB approves the February 13th, 2025 meeting minutes and pay the clerk, Ryan Johnson.
Is there a second? Mr. Kalinsky, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? And any abstentions? And the motion carries. Treasurer's report as of February 28th, 2025, we had $23,487.22. Denise, anything else with that? Okay.
I think that's a different,
NAPC
this is on the rest of.
renewed.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
That we voted on last month. Great. Administratively, any discussion, updates, or reports? Click it.
Not for me, just the correspondence.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Administratively, a past person here, Laura, right? That be our person like you. I saw her at Jim Snyder's retirement party in the City of Falls Church. She works for the City of Falls Church now. And she says hello to everybody. She was very appreciative. She gave me a hug, said, remember me? I sure do.
Yeah.
She has 2 kids.
Yeah.
I'm gonna build
Mr. Daniel.
off top of Mr. Plumby's statement because hopefully it was acceptable. I provided our language for the guidelines. That was the recognition text, and it recognized folks like Linda, Laura, all the former staff that we've had, Daniel, as well as former board members, and tried to capture the fact that we've had a large team working on that.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Okay, I never heard that if it was accepted or not, but I tried to throw some flowery language in there and, good.
You go. Sorry, yeah, Mr. Burns and then Miss Orr, I think might have something as well.
Yeah. How did the re-advertisement of the
Very well.
vacancies go? Did you get it?
Well, yes, we got very good candidates. We have a large pool, and we are interviewing now. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
Your presentation for Mr. Japori, could you, the next time that he comes before us, could you send us what you gathered? Because there were pictures and images in there that were not, it was like a whole different presentation than what he gave us. Is that possible?
Sure. I'm really hoping that it's not necessary for me to.
Yeah, and just so folks know, and certainly in Denise's and staff's defense, sometimes they don't get those presentations until very close to our meeting.
Yeah, last night or this morning, Jonathan.
I think, but
Yeah.
Kay is asking for is the presentation you showed before that.
I can certainly, I can.
That was very helpful, I think, particularly.
Yes, I can send.
That's what you were.
There were images in there that were not part of my packet that really helped.
Right, understand. And that's what I was trying to do because I realized that the application didn't have that information and I thought you all would be in the dark. So I went ahead and prepared that presentation.
Remember though,
Done.
we're still in a recorded meeting.
Yep. You shared with us a couple days ago. You put it in the invite.
That I don't think I did.
No, what was put in the Ignite was the original approval.
Yes.
The comparison pictures were
okay.
not, yeah.
Do they have a stop work order or are they closed out with the Department of Building?
I'll
Oh,
let's cover it when we get maybe to old or new business. I'll
Yeah.
kind of give an update on where.
Okay, good, thank you. Yeah.
Brief update, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Kay, did you have anything else or you're good? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Correspondence and announcements. Denise, the History Commission's letter, I saw that to the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, exactly. So that was in your packet and we actually have the History Commission representative here. Who could speak to it. It's
Sitting here trying to remember what letter we're on.
Oh,
It's a letter to Chairman McKay about the Dunloring School.
Oh,
And about the commitment that there needs to be, that there's not an effort to really track these buildings, which there needs to be.
Absolutely.
yes.
It was,
So yes, History Commission, we've been talking for some time, sort of sparked by Dunloring, but even before Dunloring. In fact, when they were talking about degrading buildings over at the workhouse, there's a building there that's 18th century, I think, house that's slowly falling apart from benign, or not so benign neglect, but is owned by the county. And so there are any number of different buildings that are owned by the county, but aren't being adequately maintained for all sorts of budgetary reasons and things like that. But the other issue with Dunloring was that the character of the building's status of the building was discounted because it wasn't on the national register. It was just on our county register. And it would seem to us that if you have a county building being reviewed and evaluated by a county agency, the first thing you want to pay attention to is whether or not it's on the county inventory. So that's
Imagine that.
Crazy.
Preservation ordinance says heritage resources and potential heritage resources should be considered. So they have notes.
I will say just as a follow-up, Chairman McKay had a directive to staff to explore a response to the History Commission and how that might be facilitated. So staff has started to undertake that response to the chairman's directive. Nice.
Mr. Dane.
When Mr. Zelma and I met with them too, the Fairfax County schools, public schools also were like, oh, we need to have a much more proactive conversation. I don't know if there's more we need to do to continue to bang on that door of theirs, because, maybe they're like, oh, this problem's gone. We'll worry about it next time we knock down an old school. Because it really was shocking to me, one, the poor people, the victims they sent to us, who were fully unprepared to speak to their project and just hired or were not ready to talk to it. And it took some very unhappy letters I had to write, as well as the History Commission, to even get folks to go maybe do an adequate job. So I don't know if I offered to you, Jason, before, if they want to have a conversation, I was there in those. If the History Commission does end up having any, I'd be happy to be there if Jason wants me to represent the ARB in some conversation. So I just think the more we stay on them, it's just like Fairfax, the Department of Transportation and like the Park Authority, that if we're not hovering around them, they go back to bad habits.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. Old business. All right. So let me talk about a couple things. First, let's talk about 1102 Chainbridge Road. So last meeting, I think Denise and I informed the board that there was a notice of violation issued for 1102 Chainbridge Road. That happened. They had an opportunity to appeal that notice of violation, and they have. They came tonight to the ARB to see, it would be fair to say, if the ARB would approve something, because then that would moot the need to go forward with an appeal on the notice of violation. Based,
Say that.
Appeal a notice of violation, like, no, we didn't.
yeah, as far as the legal process on that, you know, they're appealing it. And I think the county attorney is involved in that and staff are involved in that, and that'll be handled. The only thing that was before us was tonight's action item, which we have resolved. And then the only thing that may come before us again is if they come back again in the future with something for us to review to either approve, disapprove, modify, as we normally do.
And I will say that the hearing at the Board of Zoning Appeals has been scheduled for June 4th. So there's a clock that's ticking in essence.
And I have offered, you know, I'm sorry.
Appeal goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And we do not have to participation in that process, but I have offered to Denise as the chair to be present, at least to watch what happens, so that I would have that knowledge and I could certainly report back here.
So what is the implication? What does a notion of violation trigger?
So there's a stop work order.
That's right. They cannot, at the moment, they can't get an occupancy permit, essentially.
Sell the house.
Right.
But they could still do the replacements to the.
Yes, they can
Right.
still, there's a
That-
a stop hold on the permit, which means they can still conduct work to bring it into conformance. So the permit and, you know, and
Okay.
get inspections and.
Stop work just means, when I hear stop work, it has
Yeah,
a
not,
It's called.
particular meaning to
right,
me.
okay, not literally stop work, but yeah.
Because I was gonna say, wait, he just said 72 hours ago they did work, so that seems like.
No, they could do work to come into conformance, but they,
Can't-
I guess it's a stop on a final approval and an occupancy.
They
They can keep, yes, they can keep working. It's called a stop hold. They can continue to work on the building and under that building permit and call for inspections. They just can't get that final inspection.
Basically, it's either a worthless house or it'd be worth something if they get it approved, correct?
I think, you know, what I would say is where we are right now is we have approved something back in 2022. The county has taken action and that they do not think that what was constructed is in conformance with what we approved in 2022. This is new territory for all of us on this, and so it is hard to predict how it will play out. And so, as Denise said, that hearing with the BZA is until June, so it is possible that they may be back next month or in May before that June appeal hearing, and we may have something to act on, and if we do, we do, and if we don't, we don't.
I don't want to keep you.
That's all I have to say on that. With respect to some language on motions, which is something that Denise and I have talked about, and you may have noticed that Mr. Daniel, in making motions this evening, added some language that any changes have to be approved by the ARB. We have sought some advice from the county attorney about whether we can add that language in. There is a concern, I think, about that language and that we don't really have an enforcement mechanism at this point in time. But I don't know what the county attorney's ultimate opinion will be about whether or not we can have that language in there or not. We don't know.
I think there's some concern as well that it doesn't actually aligned with what is in the zoning ordinance. It's implied, but it's not explicit. So
Implied that change should come back.
implied, but not explicit.
Okay, well, I made it pretty explicit in my motions. Hopefully that's what you were looking for.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I guess I understand. I would have my own legal opinion on those. But I do not work for the county attorney's office.
And I am not an attorney.
You are not an attorney, but to me, as an attorney, you do things, and then when someone challenges what you do, that's when you take it up. But I will say, I do think at times, not just this county attorney, but other folks in municipal, state government tend to be a little bit more conservative.
I think part of this came out of, I shared with you guys, pictures of house that was stripped down to a bare frame, so that in the completed. It's gotta keep coming. Historic would be visible and be 7 foot brick above the roof. When Denise took this to the county review folk, they said that that was within the normal bounds of our approval. And that
With a couple small exceptions.
with a couple of small exceptions, yeah. And so pursuing this is trying to find out what protections our approvals give to historic fabric and historic buildings. And apparently at the moment, because they said that this was in the bounds, and Jonathan reviewed the second building, they tore down an entire addition and replaced it with a steel frame. And they said that was within the bounds of what we had approved. So then that led to us discussing how do we change motions so that that type of activity is.
I think
all we could do is discourage it.
well, right,
But
and
it's what it points out is the weakness in the enforcement. If you look at the zoning ordinance for us, the one that we quote every month, the only specific thing that's listed is demolition. So that was on that basis that I asked the county to review those two buildings. Does this constitute demolition? The answer I got was no. And so I thought that was very interesting. And I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind. The make approvals is that, just what does the county believe those approvals that we give actually mean?
Yeah.
So it's not the answer I expected. I'm not surprised by it.
yeah,
I was hoping for a better answer.
Yeah.
But, that is within, this is how the county looks at construction
right.
of A or B approved
Well,
projects at the moment.
Yeah, and Mr. Burns was segueing into what my final point with old business was going to be, which is, no, it's perfectly fine. Which is when we have, especially with some of the things that Mr. Burns brought up, it was for the most part, 90 to 95% consistent with what I would say the ARB approved. And I think, a good example for us all to think about, I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm not calling out the board without calling out myself. Like, I remember one that Miss Kelly had in Holland Hills, and it said, like materials to be determined and that kind of thing. And we pointed that out and had a problem with that. And I would just encourage all of us to make sure that we are looking at those drawings, because if we do end up approving something, then we are giving a lot of leeway if there's language like that about what materials and things can be used. So that, that's just a make sure you're paying adequate attention to those architectural.
And that's why I kind of did with the workhouse one with my new cup holder. That I was willing to go along with it because I didn't know what else they would be bringing to us that would be any more like with the example you gave. There was missing data, and it was more of are we just going to get a secondary map? And that was the only product here. But yeah, that was, I've been trying to ever since that last one, starting to inspect these with a lens of that.
because of past mistakes.
Sure. Mr. Plum.
Yeah, in the case of these houses being demolished or partially demolished, do we somehow in our motion say if there's any deviation from what has been approved, you must come back?
Well, that's what we're reviewing with
Yeah.
the county attorney right now
Yeah,
to determine if
That's
that's
what I was trying to
right.
shoehorn in.
Yeah, and there it is. The jury is out if we can use that language going forward or not.
okay. So,
That's the best I could tell you for right now.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, if you attach to the permit, okay, if you come across something for demolition, you come in for approval the next month, you gotta stop that part of the project and then.
I mean, that's always going to be the problem though, is then you have the code enforcement side that John's talking about, like, unless John sees it in Holland Hills or one of us happens to see it at a location.
Sure.
No,
We're
see,
counting on someone who's doing county code enforcement who is likely not experienced in evaluating historic properties and compliance with stuff like what Gabriella did for a job for an significant amount of time, right? You literally did that for a portion of your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you would go and do
Yeah.
exactly what we want someone to do.
Gotcha, and that's what we always try to have a staff member be able to do that.
Never gonna get a code inspector to.
No, I know, that's
Well,
a,
required staff sign off in order for a new construction like this to get a certificate of occupancy. So it wasn't every single permit. There was a pecking order, and this type of project would have been the most high pecking order.
and I mean, certain municipalities and certain CLGs have that kind of authority, but we don't have that right now. That's the thing we lack is.
I don't like being the cop of Holland Hills. That's
Yeah.
not what I want to be.
So-
But what I'm trying to do is to prod the county system to
Yeah.
figure out what the parameters are that we're operating under, because they're not telling us. We find these things out by, really? And I want to get past the surprises and get to where we know what we're faced with in terms of evaluating what we have approved and then what we can do to help strengthen our position.
Did we see demolition drawings and just, because he gave us so much information, I'm just wondering if they were part of the packet and we missed.
Are we talking about Mr.
The
How?
Holland Hills staff went through them and looked at every note on every drawing. And they identified a small number of deviations
Not many.
from the approval that I don't think constituted a stop work order or justified it. So in that regard, some of that is on us, for us approving things with enough vagueness that it was within an assessment of what it's reasonable to do with this description. And so that's kind of on us. So, Jason just said a few minutes ago, we need to look at these things carefully.
Well, and
Pick up things.
right, and I think it was Ms. Hammack who said earlier this evening, we can learn from some mistakes we may have made in the past, and just because there may have been things we approved in the past, we've learned, we've gained more experience, and we could be more diligent in reviewing things and what we think is necessary for us to get to approval.
Reviewing historic buildings on a regular basis is new to this board.
Mhm.
Historically, we've reviewed new construction in historic districts, and most of that was mitigating the impact of those things.
Right.
But now we're working with historic buildings every month. Well, not this month.
Yeah.
Almost every month.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's a different perspective.
Yep.
And it's a learning curve.
Yep.
It's a learning curve for me, I know.
I'm not a lawyer, but I like the idea of, while we have an audience, saying we request, or in any way that we could phrase it, that you come back to us with any changes, because again, we have an audience. I think they are paying attention to what we're saying. And I think that the board builds relationships, like the workhouse. We've built a great relationship with them. They understand the process. And some of the architects that come back to us over and over again. And I think that, of course, we want to follow the law, but again, some architect might just want to have a nice relationship with us and say, hey, my plans have changed. I want to come back to you to maintain transparency and not have the relationship that, anyway. So I like that idea. I don't know how we can phrase it. I don't see why it'd be wrong just being like, hey, we request that you stay in communication with us We understand things in the field like gutters or drawings or things change and, you know, we like just be kept, you know, aware of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am a little bit confounded, I think, by what Denise is telling me about the county attorney's view, because if it's our job to approve something, we say you have to build what we approve, and then you build something else, but they're saying, well, but we don't know that you have the authority to have them come back to you to approve it. That doesn't really make sense to me, because then why would we ever approve anything if anybody can just do whatever they want, and then we have no ability to affect that? And maybe that's a way we could say something to the county. Go ahead.
He has offered to have a meeting with you, Mr. Zelnick.
The county attorney?
Yeah, and yeah, I was gonna take that offline, but we'll say it in the room and yeah.
Attorney to attorney.
No, I have a lot of respect. No. I have friends who work in the county attorney's office. They do an amazing job.
Chair to, it's not, not attorney to attorney, but.
Right, yeah. And one second. Yeah, it's
there.
Yeah, no, I think that would be wonderful, because I think it would be great. I think maybe that's something that we should do just kind of once every so often, because I do think issues come up, and it would be great if we can communicate back and forth, because I think sometimes, you know, not that it's anybody's fault, but I'm communicating something to you, you communicate something, they communicate something to you, and it gets, you know, kind of gobbled, you know, clustered up. And so it's a game of telephone. So I would welcome that. I think that would be great.
We would also benefit from Robert's Rules of Orders training for all of us, because
That's required for the chair. Did they require it?
We had
a slideshow of training is the best you can get.
well,
I had a book and a manual and.
I had a book too, but it's just a book. It's not like training. But when you have this conflicting situation with because Joe, I don't mean to turn down your amendment, but I was just trying to follow the rules.
I'm not upset.
But that was like,
NAPC does have just like a, I don't know, maybe 5 pages that goes over basic.
yeah, it's a little cute little handbook.
Exact little handbook, and I can certainly distribute that again to the members.
I said something real quickly regarding the thing we're just talking about. With the new position, I know you probably don't have enough, that person won't have enough time, but it'd be great if there was particular projects that, you know, that once you approve them, then we should maybe tag it, this should be monitored. Have that person go out periodically, especially what the ideal thing would be is to work with the inspectors when they go out, the county inspectors, is go there and say, are they following the plans? Hey, no, wait a minute. So get it while it's still in the framing stage instead of all dry, all shut. Maybe that's another position that we could get in the future.
That's not the position that we're filling right now is an existing.
I know for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but a new position. It would need to be a new position.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
You got to work on that.
Big mug.
I'm
Yeah.
council person in Dranesville ever not aware of this or the violation.
Oh, I'm taking it home.
Yeah.
Bring it to my son. He'll love
The
it.
supervisor has been kept up to date. And he'll receive an update after tonight's meeting.
Okay, that's all I had for old and new business. Does anybody have anything else?
I have new
Yeah,
business.
Mr. Plumpy.
Tomorrow morning, 10:30, I'm going to River Farm to check out the ADA compliancy design that they're doing there. I was invited. And you also, so is that an official meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Yeah.
Holy crap. So is the public?
It's posted. Yeah.
Yeah, we're bringing our kids and dogs.
Not really. Should check that. So we're there.
No, I legitimately on another day said I could come and bring my kids. So that's the only day I can.
We will be there.
And I have.
Who's all gonna come? Raise hands, show hands.
So
I know, I'll be there.
I've offered to drive in.
No, November.
Yeah. If I have time, I'm in.
We'll be able to.
was there a day you were gonna come or?
We see the demolition house?
Yeah, well,
It was the 20th.
Well, other than tomorrow's site visit to River Farm, do we have any other new
Is it-
business?
Is that the only day we could do it?
Wow.
Jonathan gave us a bunch of dates.
We have like 8 dates.
Yeah, back and forth.
That was the one that most people.
Okay, so there's not another chance to go.
I,
It's open to the
they're-
public.
They're
I
open.
know they're open to the
so we
public.
could-
yeah, right.
Okay.
Cohorts there.
Yeah, I have to bring cohorts with me or.
Yeah.
Have fun. There's play structures there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if they were, I'm sure you guys are gonna get wined and dined all over the place.
Yeah.
Gonna go drinking at Riverbend. So.
Yeah.
Move for adjournment.
All right, there's a motion
Did
to
they give you
adjourn.
any
All in,
help?
no, don't need one. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it's granted. Everybody have a great month. We'll see you in April.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
About the site visit. I'm not going, so I've.
Oh, well.
Yeah, they.